The lullaby floats through the crack in the door, soft, a song she learned from her own mother. He stands in the dark hallway, hand pressed flat against the wall, suit jacket still on, tie pulled loose an hour ago. Inside the nursery, his wife rocks their son. Her voice is the only warm thing in this house. He's been running a criminal empire for 15 years, never once stopped to feel the cold. But now he hears the melody, sees the way she cradles the boy's head, and something behind his ribs finally breaks. He slides down the wall, covers his mouth, and weeps, because he knows this is the last night she'll wait up for him. This man built an empire on blood and silence, head of one of Seoul's most feared crime syndicates, 15 years of boardroom knives and back alley deals, never let anyone see him blink. But in this house, there was a woman who saw through the armor, a black woman from Louisiana who walked into his world and refused to be afraid of the dark. She gave him a son. She gave him something he didn't deserve. And now, standing in the hallway, he finally understands the one thing money and power could never buy. Her patience has run out. The lullaby isn't a gift, it's a goodbye, and he has exactly one chance to become the man she always believed he could be. To understand what breaks a man like Min-ho Kang, you have to go back to where he was made. Born in 1979 in a one-room apartment in Incheon, father absent by the time he was 6, mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the heat on. By 12, he was running errands for a local loan shark. By 16, he killed a man for the first time, not in anger, in survival. A rival enforcer had cornered his boss. Min-ho picked up a tire iron and ended the threat. He never looked back. 20 years later, he controlled half the illegal gambling in Seoul, a construction front company worth 80 billion won, and a network of enforcers who would take a bullet without blinking. He had everything a man in his world was supposed to want, except he was alone. The women who passed through his life were transactional, beautiful, temporary, paid to leave before sunrise. His mother, now living in a Gangnam penthouse he bought her, had spent years pressuring him to marry, not for love, for alliance. The Choi family ran the port operations in Busan. A marriage to their daughter would seal a partnership worth billions. Min-ho attended the dinners, shook the hands, never said yes. He was waiting for something he couldn't name. And then, 3 years ago, she walked into his world. Her name was Amara, 26 years old, born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Her father was a welder, her mother a nurse. She had saved for 7 years to study abroad, earned a master's in early childhood education from Seoul National University. She took a job teaching at a private academy in Gangnam. She had no idea what kind of man owned the building. She met him by accident, a fire alarm. She was carrying a toddler from her class down the stairs. He was coming up to check on his property. He saw her with the child on her hip, calm, focused, not panicking. He stopped. She said, "Excuse me." He moved aside. That was the whole encounter, but he sent someone the next day to find out who she was. He didn't approach her, he observed. He learned her schedule. He came to the building at pickup time, stood in the lobby, pretended to take a call. She noticed him watching. She was not intimidated. She walked up to him one afternoon and said, "You're the owner, why are you staring at me?" He didn't have an answer. That was the first time in his adult life he had been speechless. She smiled. "You should try talking, it's usually more productive." And she walked away. He invited her to coffee. She said no. He sent flowers. She returned them. He showed up at her classroom door with a book about child psychology. She took the book, thanked him, and closed the door. For 3 months, he pursued her with a patience he had never applied to anything except building his empire. She finally agreed to dinner. She asked him one question over appetizers. "What are you afraid of?" He told her the truth. "Being known." She looked at him for a long moment. "Then why are you here?" He didn't have an answer for that either, but he kept showing up. They were together for a year before she learned what he really did. She had suspected. The late calls, the men who came to the door, the way people in restaurants lowered their voices when he walked in. She confronted him in his study. He didn't lie, he told her everything. The gambling, the protection, the bodies he had ordered, the bodies he had buried. She sat in silence. Then she said, "I have a son, he's 2 years old. His father was killed in a drive-by in New Orleans. I moved here to give him a different life. If you are part of his life, you will not bring that world into our home. Do you understand?" He said yes, he meant it. They married in a small ceremony. No one from his world attended except his second-in-command, a man named Sung. His mother refused to come. She called Amara a foreigner and worse. Min-ho cut his mother off for 6 months. That was the first time he had ever defied her. For Amara, he would have burned the whole empire. They had a son together, Kai, a boy with his father's eyes and his mother's smile. Min-ho held him in the delivery room and wept. The nurses thought it was joy, it was terror. For the first time, he had something he could not protect with violence, something that made him vulnerable. He tried to change. He hired a legitimate business manager. He started pulling back from the edge of his operations. But in his world, you do not retire, you are removed. The pressure came from 3 directions. First, his mother. She had never stopped pushing for the Choi alliance. She saw Amara as a threat to the family legacy. She began planting doubts in Min-ho's mind. She will leave. She will take your son. She is not one of us. Second, the Choi family. They had invested heavily in expectating the merger. When Min-ho married Amara, they lost face. They began squeezing his legitimate businesses, applying pressure through regulators and inspectors. Third, his own men. They saw him softening. They whispered that the boss had gone weak, that a foreign woman had unmanned him. Amara felt the cold before she understood it. The house grew quiet. Min-ho came home later. He stopped meeting her eyes. He started sleeping in a separate room. She asked him what was wrong. He said nothing. She asked again. He snapped at her for the first time in their marriage. She didn't cry. She just looked at him and said, "You're pushing me away because you're afraid I'll leave." But I was never going to leave. Now I'm not so sure. She walked out of the room and closed the door. He stood there, fists clenched, unable to speak. That was 6 months ago. Since then, the distance has grown into a canyon. She still lives in the house. She still takes care of Kai. But she has started making plans. A job offer in Singapore, a preliminary conversation with a lawyer. She hasn't told him yet, but he knows. He sees the brochures she leaves on the counter. He sees the way she packs his lunch with less care. He sees her pulling away 1 centimeter at a time. And tonight, standing outside the nursery door, listening to her sing the lullaby she sang on their wedding night, he realizes the truth. She is not leaving because she stopped loving him. She is leaving because she stopped believing he would ever let her in. He wipes his face. He straightens his jacket. He pushes the door open. She looks up startled. The song stops. Kai is asleep in her arms. She says nothing. He says, "I need to tell you the truth, all of it, not the version I've been feeding you, the real truth." She waits. He opens his mouth. And then his phone rings. A number he knows too well, his second in command. He never calls at this hour unless it's an emergency. Min-ho looks at the phone. He looks at her. He makes a choice he cannot undo. He looked at the phone. He looked at her. He stepped into the hallway and answered. Di-sung's voice was tight, controlled. "Boss, we have a problem. The Choi family just seized the cargo at Incheon. They have 3 of our men. They're demanding a meeting tonight." Min-ho's jaw tightened. This was not a coincidence. The Chois had been waiting for a moment of weakness. They had found it. He hung up and turned back to the nursery door. Amara was standing with Kai still asleep on her shoulder, her face unreadable. "You have to go." Not a question, a statement. He opened his mouth to explain, to promise he would be back in an hour, to say all the things he had said before. She shook her head. "Go, I'll be here when you get back." But her voice said something different. He wanted to stay. He wanted to finish the conversation he had started. The phone buzzed again. Di-sung. He silenced it and walked out. The drive to Incheon took 40 minutes. Min-ho used every second to run the calculations. The cargo was worth 2 billion won. Electronics, untaxed, bound for a buyer in Shanghai. If the Chois kept it, he lost the shipment and the face. If he went to war, he lost the legitimate front he had spent 3 years building. Either way, Amara and Kai would pay the price. He arrived at the warehouse. Empty except for 3 men tied to chairs and Di-sung standing over them, a bloody rag pressed to his arm. "They jumped us at the offload. 20 men, they knew our schedule." Min-ho looked at the bound men, his men. One of them would not meet his eyes. "Who talked?" Silence. He walked over to the man who wouldn't look at him, a kid named Yi-won, barely 22, with a gambling debt Min-ho had paid off twice. "Yi-won, look at me." The kid lifted his head. Tears. "Said they'd kill my mother. She has diabetes. They said they'd stop her insulin." Min-ho believed him. He had seen this tactic before. The Chois didn't break men. They broke the people men loved. He turned to Di-sung. "Cut him loose. Find his mother. Put her in a safe house tonight." Then he pulled out his phone and called the number he had been avoiding for months. His mother answered on the first ring. "I was wondering when you would call." Her voice was calm, victorious. "You did this." "I did what was necessary. The Choi girl is still waiting. That woman and her child are a liability, you know this." He gripped the phone until his knuckles cracked. "You threatened my son." "I threatened no one. I offered the Choi's an opportunity. They took it. This is business, Minho. You taught me that. He ended the call. He had one move left before everything collapsed. He drove home. House was dark except for the nursery light. He ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, empty, the rocking chair still. The window open, he turned, heart hammering, and saw her suitcase by the front door. Amara came down the hallway with Kai in a carrier, her coat on. She stopped when she saw him. Your mother came to see me this afternoon. She told me everything. The Choi family, the threats, the offer she made for me to disappear quietly. She told me if I stay, Kai will never be safe. Minho stepped forward. I will protect you, I will burn the whole. No, her voice was quiet, final. You will not burn anything, you will choose, and I already know what you will choose because you always choose the call, you always choose the empire, you always choose the thing that keeps you from having to feel. She walked past him toward the door. He grabbed her wrist. Please. She looked down at his hand, then up at his face. A tear slid down her cheek. I love you. But I love my son more, and you are not safe for him. She pulled free and walked out. He stood in the doorway, watching her taillights disappear down the driveway. Then he closed the door and picked up the phone. Not Sung, not his mother, a number he had sworn he would never use again. The man who answered had a voice like gravel. You sure about this? No, but I have nothing left to lose. Then meet me at the fish market, midnight, come alone. The line went dead. He put the phone in his pocket and looked at the empty nursery one more time. Then he stepped out into the rain. At the fish market, under a single flickering light, stood Park Sung-ho, the only man in Seoul who had ever beaten Minho in a fight. 15 years ago, they had been rivals. Minho had been younger, faster, dumber. Park had left him in an alley with 3 broken ribs and a warning, someday you will need me more than you hate me. Tonight was that day. Park was older now, grey at the temples, but his eyes were still the dead kind. You want the Choi's dead or just crippled? Minho shook his head. I want my family back, I want my mother neutralized, and I want out. Park laughed, a dry sound. No one gets out, you know that. I have a son, he will not grow up in this world. Park studied him for a long moment. And what do you offer me in return? Everything, the construction company, the gambling lines, the port connections, all of it. Take the empire, leave me alive, leave them alone. Park considered. One condition, you owe me a life. Not money, a life. When I call, you come, no questions. Minho nodded, shook the man's hand, and walked away from everything he had built. He drove to his mother's penthouse. No call, no warning. He used his key and found her in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, watching the news. She didn't look surprised. I thought you would come. He sat down across from her. You will leave Amara alone. You will leave Kai alone. You will never speak to them or about them again. If you do, I will tell the Choi's everything you have hidden from them. The accounts in Switzerland, the property in Jeju. The fact that you have been bleeding their business for years. Her face went pale. You would destroy your own mother. You threatened my son. You made your choice. Now I have made mine. He stood. The marriage to the Choi girl will not happen. I'm out of the organization. If you try to come after me, I will bring everything down, including you. He left her sitting in the dark. He found Amara at a motel near the airport. He knocked. She opened the door, Kai asleep on the bed behind her. She looked exhausted. How did you find me? Sung tracked your credit card. I asked him to. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to ask you to wait, not forever, just long enough to see if I can become the man you believed I could be. She stared at him. What does that mean? I gave up the empire tonight, all of it. To a man who will not let me back in even if I wanted to. I ended my mother's hold on me. There is nothing left except you and Kai. I don't expect you to trust me, but I am asking you to give me 1 month. If I can prove that I have changed, you stay. If not, I will sign the divorce papers and never contact you again. She looked at him for a long moment. 1 month. She closed the door. He stood in the parking lot for 20 minutes, rain soaking through his suit. Then he got in his car and drove home to an empty house. He sat in the nursery, in the rocking chair, and did not sleep, because tomorrow he had to figure out how to be a good man after a lifetime of being something else, and the clock was already ticking. The first 3 days of the month passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Minho woke alone in the house and did the things he had never done before. He made coffee, he made a grocery list. He went to a market and bought food with his own hands. He paid in cash because his accounts were frozen, transferred to Park. He drove to the motel each morning and left a coffee and a pastry at Amara's door before she woke. He did not knock, he did not stay. He just left the offering and walked away. The 4th morning he found the coffee untouched, the pastry eaten. That was progress. On the fifth day, he called a lawyer he had never used for anything illegal, a woman named Yoon Jae-ah who specialized in custody and family law. He told her he wanted to prepare for the worst-case scenario. If Amara decided to leave, he would not fight her. He wanted to make sure she had full financial support without any obligation to stay. Jae-ah stared at him. "You're giving her everything and asking for nothing? I'm asking her to raise my son well. That's not nothing." She wrote the papers. He signed them. He did not tell Amara. On day 7, Park Sung-ho called. "I need you in Hongdae tonight. No weapons." Min-ho felt the old pull, the obligation, the debt. "I am not one of your men anymore. You owe me a life. Tonight, 9 o'clock, the Blue Lantern Bar. Come alone." Park hung up. Min-ho went. The bar was empty except for Park and two men Min-ho did not recognize. Park gestured to a seat. "Sit, drink." Min-ho sat. "What do you need?" Park leaned forward. "I need you to tell me how to run your old business. Your mother is already trying to undermine me. She's been making calls. She wants the Choi's to take control. I need to know everything she knows." Min-ho felt the trap. If he helped Park, he was still in the game. If he refused, Park could make his life impossible. But there was a third option. He pulled out his phone and showed Park a file. "This is every account, every property, every bribe she has hidden for 15 years. I had it prepared before I walked out. Use it. But this is the last thing I give you. The life debt is paid." Park read the file. His expression shifted. "This is more valuable than any hit I could ask for. Fine, you are free." Min-ho stood and walked out. He had given up his final card, but he had bought his freedom. The second week, Amara agreed to meet him for coffee in a public place. Neutral ground. She brought Kai, who reached for his father immediately. Min-ho held his son and felt the familiar ache. "I've given up the organization completely. I have no money left except what I can earn legally. I am starting over." She studied him. "What will you do?" "There is a construction company that needs a project manager. Legitimate. The owner is a friend of Di-sung's brother. I start Monday. The pay is enough for a small apartment." She blinked. "You are going to work for someone else. I have no one to command anymore. That is the point." She was quiet. Then she said, "Kai asked for you last night. He said Appa fix shoe." Min-ho felt his throat tighten. "I will fix his shoes and everything else I can." She nodded once. "I will think about it." She took Kai and left. But peace never lasts in a world built on shadows. On day 11, Di-sung called with news that turned Min-ho's blood cold. Park had been found dead in his car, shot twice in the head. The organization had no clear leader, and the Choi's were moving to absorb everything. Min-ho's mother had been seen meeting with Choi's head, enforcer the night of the killing. The implication was clear. His mother had orchestrated Park's death to destabilize the reorganization and force Min-ho back into power. He drove to his mother's penthouse. She answered the door in silk. "I wondered when you would figure it out. You killed Park. I removed a problem. You gave him everything I spent decades building. I took it back. And now you expect me to return?" She smiled. "I expect you to be the man I raised, the man who does not let a foreign woman and her child destroy our legacy." Min-ho stepped closer. "You have 1 hour to leave Seoul. If you are still here, I will go to the Choi's and tell them you have been siphoning their accounts for a decade. They will kill you slowly." She laughed. "You would not." He showed her the evidence on his phone, the same file he had given Park, plus more. "I have backups. Leave or die." Her face went white. She took her purse and walked out. He watched her go. He had destroyed his last blood tie. But the Choi's were already moving. Late that night, Min-ho's phone lit up with a number he did not recognize. A man's voice. "You have something we want, the shipment, the port access, the woman and the child. Bring us the access codes and we leave them alone. Otherwise, we take what we want by force." Min-ho's voice went cold. "Touch my family and I will find every one of you. I have nothing left to lose." "You have everything to lose and you know it." The call ended. He knew this was not an empty threat. The Choi's had eyes everywhere. He had one ally left, Di-sung. He called him. "I need a safe house, invisible, no paper trail, 2 people. Di-sung paused. "There is a place, my uncle's cabin in the mountains, 2 hours north, no one knows it. I can take the woman and the boy tonight. Do it, and Di-sung, if anything happens to them, I will hold you responsible." "Understood, boss." "I am not your boss." "Understood." He drove to the motel. Amara opened the door, Kai already asleep. He told her everything. The Choi's, the threat, the cabin. She did not argue. She packed in silence. At the door, she turned to him. "What will you do?" "I will end this. Permanently, I will make sure they never come for you again." "How?" "I will give them what they want, the codes, the accounts, everything." "And then what?" "They will still come." He shook his head. "I will make sure the codes are worthless." I will transfer everything to a frozen account that triggers a full investigation. By morning, the Chois will be fighting the National Tax Service and the prosecutor's office. They will be too busy to hunt us. She stared. You would burn your own empire to the ground. It was never mine, not anymore, it is just ash. She stepped forward and touched his face. Come with us. He closed his eyes. I cannot, I need to be here to push the button. If I disappear, they will chase us forever. I will join you in 2 days, I promise. She did not believe him. He could see it in her eyes, but she nodded and got into Di-sung's car. He watched them drive away into the dark. He spent the next 36 hours executing the plan. He contacted the lawyer. He triggered the transfers. He sent anonymous tips to 3 news agencies and the tax office. By the evening of the second day, the Chois were under investigation and Min-ho's old organization was a smoking crater. He drove north to the cabin. He arrived at dawn. The door was locked. He knocked. No answer. He used the key Di-sung had given him. The cabin was cold, empty. A single piece of paper on the table. Di-sung's handwriting. They found us. Took them an hour ago. They said to meet at the old warehouse. Bring the real codes. Come alone. I am sorry. Min-ho read the note 3 times. Then he crumpled it. He had nothing left. No empire, no money, no allies. Just a gun he had kept hidden and a family that was one wrong move away from being erased. He got back in his car and drove toward the warehouse, knowing with absolute certainty that this was the last drive he would ever make. Either he walked out with his wife and son, or he did not walk out at all. And either way, the world he had built was already gone. The warehouse loomed against the gray dawn sky. Min-ho parked a block away, walked the rest. He carried nothing but the gun and a single printed page, the real access codes worthless now, but the Chois didn't know that. He pushed open the side door. The space was vast, empty except for a single light hanging over a metal chair. In it sat Di-sung, bound, bloody. Standing behind him, Choi Yi-ho, the family's eldest son, and 2 enforcers. No sign of Amara or Kai. Min-ho's heart dropped. Where are they? Choi smiled. Safe for now, the codes first. Min-ho held up the paper. Let them go, then you get this. Choi nodded to an enforcer who disappeared into a back room. A moment later, Amara emerged, holding Kai, both pale but unharmed. Kai saw his father and reached. Appa, Amara held him tight, eyes locked on Min-ho. Choi stepped forward. The codes. Min-ho handed over the paper. Choi read it, frowned. This is a tax filing trigger. Yes. By now, the National Tax Service has warrants for every account linked to your family. You have about 30 minutes before they arrive at your front door. I suggest you use them to run. Choi's face twisted. He pulled a gun and aimed it at Min-ho. Then I will kill you first. Amara screamed. Min-ho did not flinch. You can kill me, but then you will never know I have a second copy buried with a prosecutor who is already waiting for my call. Kill me and your entire family falls within the hour. Choi's finger hovered on the trigger. The enforcer behind him shifted, and then a voice from the shadows. Put it down, Yi-ho. A woman stepped into the light. It was Yoon Jae-ah, the lawyer. She held a phone. I have been recording this entire conversation. The audio is already uploaded to 3 secure servers. If anything happens to Min-ho or his family, it goes to every news agency in Seoul within 5 minutes. Choi stared. I am his lawyer, and I am very good at my job. She held up the phone. The police are 3 minutes out. You have 2 choices. Leave now and try to save your empire, or stay and ruin your whole family in a murder trial. Choi looked at Min-ho, at the lawyer, at the gun in his hand. He lowered it. This is not over. He walked out, his men following. The warehouse fell silent. Di-sung slumped in the chair, barely conscious. Min-ho cut him loose. You led them to her. Di-sung nodded, eyes wet. They had my daughter, I had no choice. Min-ho helped him stand. I know you are still my friend. Di-sung limped away into the dark, and then Min-ho turned to Amara. She was standing with Kai in her arms, tears streaming down her face. He walked to her, stopped a foot away. I am sorry for everything, for every choice that led to this. She shook her head. You came. You did not run, you came. She handed him Kai. He held his son, buried his face in the boy's hair. Amara stepped closer. The month is not over. He looked up. No, but I have nothing left. No money, no house, no empire, just a criminal record and a promise I will never go back. She reached out and took his hand. That is all I ever wanted, not the empire, you. He closed his eyes. The tears he had held back for weeks finally broke. They drove away from the warehouse in Yoon Jae-ah's car. She dropped them at a small motel outside the city. Di-sung had left a bag with clean clothes and a few days' cash. Min-ho did not ask where it came from. In the room, Amara put Kai to bed. Then she sat across from Min-ho at the small table. What happens next? He told her the truth. I have a job interview tomorrow, legitimate, construction foreman. The pay is modest. There is a small apartment in Guro district that I can afford. It has one bedroom. She looked at him. One bedroom? Kai can have the room. We can take the cooch. I do not mind. A small laugh escaped her. The first he had heard in months. You are going to sleep on a cooch? I have slept in worse places. She reached across the table and took his hand. We do not need a bedroom. We need a father, a husband, a man who comes home. He squeezed her hand. I will come home every night, I promise. That night, for the first time in months, they slept in the same bed, Kai between them. Min-ho did not sleep. He stayed awake, watching them breathe, memorizing the shape of his family. The job interview went well. The owner of the construction firm was an old rival of Park Sung-ho's, a man who respected Min-ho's reputation but had no use for his past. You show up on time, you follow orders, you do not bring your old life here. Understood, understood. He started the following Monday. His salary was 3 million won a month. He took the bus. He ate lunch from a packed container. He came home tired, with dirt under his nails, and kissed his wife and son. For 2 weeks, this was his life. It was the happiest he had ever been. And then on a Wednesday afternoon, a letter arrived at the construction site. No return address. Inside, a single photograph, his mother sitting in a cafe in Paris, smiling, scrawled on the back, I am watching, I am waiting, you will come back. Min-ho showed the photo to no one. He burned it that night in the motel parking lot. He did not tell Amara. He did not want her to carry the weight of his mother's shadow. But he knew the past does not let go easily. Some chains are buried so deep that cutting them takes more than one act of courage. It takes a lifetime of choosing differently. That night, as he tucked Kai into bed, his son looked up at him. Appa, you stay? I stay. Forever? Min-ho paused. Forever is a long time. Kai nodded seriously. I know, but you said you would, so you have to. From the doorway, Amara watched. She did not say anything, but when Kai fell asleep, she walked over, put her arms around Min-ho from behind, and pressed her cheek to his back. In the silence, she began to hum, the same lullaby from the first night. The one that had broken him open in the dark hallway. He turned, held her, and for the first time in his life, he let himself be held. The lullaby did not stop. This time, he was staying. Min-ho Kang did not become a saint. He did not erase 25 years of violence with 1 month of honest work. But he showed up. Every morning, he caught the bus at 6:15 with a packed lunch Amara made him. Every evening, he came home with concrete dust in his hair and let his son climb onto his shoulders. He paid taxes. He apologized when he was short. He learned to say the words he had never said. I was wrong, and I need help, and I love you. The Choi family did not disappear. They lost the tax battle, but they survived. They still operate out of Busan, smaller now, quieter. His mother stayed in Paris. She sends a card every Christmas. He burns them unopened. Di-sung disappeared for 6 months, then resurfaced with a different name and a convenience store in Incheon. He calls Min-ho on his birthday. They do not talk about the warehouse. The small apartment in Guro district became a home. Amara found work at a community center, teaching early childhood education. She comes home tired too. They eat dinner at a table that folds out from the wall. They argue about whose turn it is to do laundry. They laugh more than they ever did in the mansion. And Kai grows. He learns to read in 2 languages. He draws pictures of his family, 3 stick figures under a yellow sun. His father is always smiling in the drawings. When his teacher asks what his father does, Kai says, he builds things and he comes home. That is the part the old Min-ho never understood. Power is not the ability to destroy. Power is the ability to stay when it is hard, to stay when you are afraid, to stay when every instinct you built over a lifetime tells you to run, to fight, to dominate, to close yourself off until nothing can hurt you. Real strength is opening the door, walking into the light, letting the lullaby wash over you instead of standing in the dark hallway pretending you cannot hear it. He still has nightmares. Some mornings he wakes with his hands in fists, heart pounding, reaching for a weapon that is no longer there. Amara puts her hand on his chest and says, you are here, you are safe. He breathes. He lets the tension drain. He gets up and makes coffee, 1 day at a time. The question this story leaves us with is not whether a man like Min-ho can change. He did. The question is what it takes for any of us to stop performing the version of ourselves the world expected us to become and start becoming who we actually want to be. The answer is not a single dramatic moment. It is the decision you make every morning when you choose to show up, to feel, to stay. If this story reached you, drop a comment. Tell us about the door you are standing outside of, the one you are afraid to walk through, or the one you walked through and never regretted. Share this with someone who needs to hear that it is not too late, because it is never too late to become the person your child draws with a smile. Subscribe to join more journeys like this. We tell stories that matter, and we will see you in the next one.